moment you hear Bill Frisell, you instantly know it's him. There's quite simply nobody that sounds like that. But why? What is he actually doing that makes his musical language so unmistakably and uniquely his own? Today, his 75th birthday, I want to answer that question through a close study of one of his most famous compositions, Strange Meeting. I'm going to look at the melody, the harmony, some arranging and improvising strategies, and by the end you'll have a real framework for understanding what makes Bill Frisell sound like Bill Frisell, and some concrete ideas for how to integrate some of that into your playing straight away. Strange Meeting first appeared in 1985 on his recording Rambler, one of his early ECM recordings, and he's returned to it many times since. There's the Power Tools version from 1987, which is more raw and electric. There's a live version from 1991, I believe, in Seville with Joey Barron. There's the quartet recording from 1996, a live version from 2004. So he keeps coming back to this tune, and each version tells you something different about where he was at that particular point in time. Every recording is special and unique. But the recordings that really define the arc for me are these. First, This Land from 1994. That's the version that actually introduced me to this piece. A friend's older brother put on the recording after we'd watched Mulholland Drive for the first time in the early 2000s. During that time I was in a deep David Lynch obsession, I was binge watching Twin Peaks. I was completely absorbed in that surreal, unsettling, dreamlike, Americana atmosphere that David Lynch had created in his films, and something about Strange Meeting had exactly that quality. I genuinely thought Strange Meeting was from a Lynch soundtrack. I even had to go check the sleeve of the recording. Of course it wasn't, but that confusion tells you something. Frisell's music exists in its own sort of cinematic world. The next recording that defines this arc for me is the 2001 recording with Dave Holland and Elvin Jones. Holland and Jones are obviously two of the greatest musicians to have ever walked this earth. So that recording obviously has a certain depth and feel to it. And most recently, there's the recording on the Orchestras album, released on Blue Note in 2024. This is a live performance with the Umbria Jazz Orchestra, arranged and conducted by Michael Gibbs, with Rudy Royston on drums and Thomas Morgan on bass. In Emma Fran's excellent documentary, Bill Frisell, A Portrait, I've dropped the link in the description, definitely go and watch it if you haven't. Frisell talks about his desire to perform and record this song with an orchestra, and then here it is finally, 40 years later, after it was first recorded, he's realizing that dream. But the recording I'm working with today is actually from 2021. It's a duo performance with Julian Lage in Lincoln, Massachusetts. What happens in that performance is hard to describe. These are two of the greatest guitarists alive at the moment, and at some point the distinction between who's playing what just completely dissolves. It's like one of those Indian gods with multiple arms, one unified consciousness operating through multiple limbs simultaneously. That's what it sounds like: one musician, four arms, two Telecasters, one sound. That's a recording for me that really brings out the melody and the harmony most clearly, and that's what I'm going to break down for you today. form of strange meeting is a 32 bar AAB form. The full lead sheet is over on my Patreon, but I'm going to quickly run you through the changes because that's going to make everything that follows a whole lot easier to understand. The first two A sections start on the 1 chord, C minor, but if you listen to a lot of the different recordings of this tune, Frisell's actually playing this C minor with a F sharp added into it. I'll talk a bit more about that later when I'm breaking down the melody and how it interacts with the harmony. And he moves to D over F sharp, which he plays in a lot of recordings like this. Then A flat major with a sharp 11. Then A flat minor 6. Back to C minor. And so that repeats itself. So in the bridge, he moves to the 4 chord, F minor, G7, back to C minor. That repeats itself. Then he adds this G7 in to go back to the final A section, which actually goes back to F minor. And then up to this D over F sharp, back to the A flat major sharp 11, A flat minor 6, back to C minor. Okay, so let's get into the melodic progression. This is a concept that I learned from my mentor Jordan Clemens, and I believe that he learnt it from Stefan Harris. I use it in my teaching as well. It simply means the triads and the tension notes that are contained within the melody that imply the harmony of the tune. Frisell builds his melodic progression from simple triads and tension notes. Triads are the stable foundations and resolution points that the melody returns to. Tension notes want to obviously resolve back into the triads, and it's the push and pull between tension and resolution that gives any great tune its emotional quality. So the opening phrase is part of a C minor triad, but notice what Frisell's doing here. He's using an F sharp, the sharp 4, as either a blue note or a leading tone into the 5th. And then the 3rd of the triad, which is actually the melody note. And as I alluded to before, Frisell is actually playing the C and the F sharp underneath the melody to accompany it. And on a lot of recordings, he's also playing the G alongside that, the 5th of the triad. But instead of resolving that F sharp, he just lets it sit there. If you've watched my videos on Thelonious Monk, this approach should be familiar. This interval between the F sharp and the G, the minor second. Second intervals are something that's very characteristic of the music of Monk, but also Frisell, and Frisell has definitely taken inspiration from Monk. Measure 2 is the first strange meeting for me in this tune. That F sharp, which is a sharp 4, quite dissonant in the first measure, also a blue note, it's now become a stable root note in this next measure. And the melody is just from a D major triad. So this is what the title of the song means to me, and I think it's also distinctive about Frisell's music. Two things that seem to be in opposition: a blue note and a root note, dissonance and stability, and then they meet and somehow they fit together. That pivot, what you could call a tonal destabilisation, is all throughout this song and also all throughout Frisell's music. For me, it's not just the title of this song, it's a description of this music, but also all of Frisell's music. I first encountered this term, tonal destabilisation, in Dan Cosley's excellent video on Bill Frisell's sound. I've also linked that in the description, go and watch it. And that term for me captures something that's very distinctive about Frisell's sound. Over the A flat major sharp 11, Frisell moves back into a C minor triad. That A flat in the bass on top. Then here's another pivot, that F sharp resolves down to F, which is the 4 or the 11, that adds that quality to the harmony. The melody is just that C natural with the A flat in the bass. And notice the space here that allows Frisell to do that. Leading into the next couple of measures, Frisell returns to that sharp 4 and the 4. And this is another example of the pivot or modulation or tonal destabilisation, whatever you want to call it, where that sharp 4 and the 4 actually becomes the 6 of this A flat minor 6. And again, this is another example of the space that Frisell creates through this quite simple melody that allows him to construct another counter melody, which is just an A flat minor triad with a leading tone into the 5th. Tension 2, hammering off from the 3rd, resolving down to the root. Then he harmonizes it with the E flat and the C flat, which is the 5th and the 3rd from that A flat minor triad. And then back to the pickup note. And then the melody repeats itself. Before moving on to the second A section, I want to briefly comment on Frisell's feel, which is another thing that defines his sound. This is the thing that really hits you when you try and transcribe Frisell and play along to any of his recordings. He doesn't play on the beat in any conventional sense. He simply glides through the tune. The notes arrive like in strange ways, slightly early, slightly late, floating like through the tune. Very much reminds me of scenes from David Lynch films. Just think of that scene in the nightclub in Mulholland Drive. The whole thing is suffused with a dreamlike quality. This is also true of the way that Frisell accompanies himself. Those bass stabs, the dyads, all these little fragments that add to the texture of his arrangements. And so the way that he accompanies himself, it anchors the tune, but in a strange way, in a way that accentuates the dreamlike, floating, drifting quality of it. And so when you're transcribing or playing along to a recording, this is really one of the main things that you want to get out of it, is trying to get the feel of a player, which is not something that you can get written down on a page. And spend any time trying to do this with Frisell, you realize just how amazing and unique his playing is. So there are a few things that are different about the way that he accompanies himself in the second A section that are worth noting. The first are these chordal stabs that he plays. That's a G minor 7 shell chord. I'd call this voicing an F sharp altered dominant. So that line there is just a A flat major triad with a tension 2, and the way that Frisell plays this line I think is quite distinctive and exemplary of his sound, letting the notes ring out, wide intervallic leaps. The next measures, he moves way up the neck. That's just an A flat minor triad that he's harmonizing it with. And a C minor triad using this sharp 4 again. That's obviously the 3rd. And the root. On to the bridge. bridge starts with an F minor triad using the tension 2, the G natural. Just harmonized with an F minor triad. The minor third of the F minor triad down to this flat 7 of the G7 sus flat 9. And what Frisell does here to harmonize this part of the melody, I think, is very Frisellian. He plays the 5th with the natural harmonic, and then the G and the B, which are the root and the 3rd of a G major triad. Again, that C minor triad. And there's that D natural, which gets us this G7 sound, leads us out of the bridge back into the final A section. F minor triad, just a D major triad, A flat major, A flat minor, back to C minor. So a few things about what the melodic progression teaches us, and also the meaning of strange meeting for me. The whole melodic progression is built from a handful of simple triads and tension notes, so few that you could probably write them all down on the side of one napkin. But look at what Frisell is able to build around it to create this very distinctive sound. There are natural harmonics that shimmer and float, open strings that blur the edges of the harmony, ninths that hover over triads. From Monk, those second intervals, subtle blue notes, a feel that glides and sort of floats in some ethereal, phantom-like way. And running throughout the whole tune are all those pivot points and modulations. These are all part of the strange meetings that happen throughout the tune. Two things that seem to be in opposition, and then they meet and they seem to fit. For me, that's not just the title of the piece, it is the piece. If you want to go a little deeper into this tune, I've just launched a Patreon alongside this video, and I'm offering founding member status to the first 50 subscribers. As a founding member, your price is locked in forever. Whatever happens with the pricing down the line, you'll always pay the same price that you signed up for. So for the price of less than a coffee per month, you get access to all of my PDFs and also exclusive bonus material. And you also help support projects that I'm currently working on, such as a massive transcription project of that Julian, Lage and Bill Frisell duo performance. All of this work takes a lot of time, and your support via Patreon is what will make it possible. All the details are in the description to this video, and as I said, founding member spots are limited. So what makes Bill Frisell sound like Bill Frisell? After everything that we've looked at today, I think it comes down to a set of principles or aesthetic choices that I wouldn't really think of as separate components, but all working together to create a very distinctive Frisellian sound. The first is melodic intention. Stop playing so many notes. Play one or two, let them breathe, let them sing, give them space to say what they want to say. Everything Bill Frisell does is thematic, motific. He states an idea, develops it, brings it to its conclusion, lets it resolve in its own time. The restraint is not a limitation. I'd actually say it's one of his greatest strengths, and something that is very distinctive about his ability to just play the sweetest notes. That brings me to the second feature, which is thematic or motific development. Not different ideas one after another, but the same idea illuminated from different angles. The theme stays constant, the angle changes. The third is having nothing to prove. Simple, diatonic, letting the melody do its work. Frisell has been playing music for a long time. That guy knows a lot about music, but he's not showing off. He's not, trying to prove anything. Just very elegant, beautiful playing, which is part of what makes it so sophisticated. The fourth are the simple counter melodies he's able to construct because of the space that he gives to the melody. So by not overplaying, he actually allows him the space to create counter melodies which help to accentuate the main melody. The fifth is his feel, which I commented on earlier. It literally is like gliding or floating through the harmony and the melody of a tune, very reminiscent of many scenes in David Lynch films. Those bass stabs, the dyads, the way that he accompanies himself, all of that has this very unique and very distinct feel that is truly his own. And it's something that if you do transcribe any of his music, you will come to a deeper appreciation of that feel. The sixth is the influence of Monk on his playing and the way that he uses blue notes. Those second intervals, the dissonant dyads, that's something that's all throughout Monk's music and all throughout Bill Frisell's music, not just this tune. But I'd say, like any great musician, Bill Frisell has made them truly his own. The use of blue notes as well, very subtle, not trying to overplay it. He's able to create these killing voicings like this. Like, who would have ever thought of that? The seventh is timbre, harmonics, open strings. That's something that's very distinctively part of his sound. Bell-like, shimmery feeling, something dreamlike, something ethereal. And the eighth thing is that tonal destabilisation that I spoke about earlier. This for me is the strange meeting at the heart of his music. He doesn't resolve tension in a conventional way. He moves the harmony around so that the same note can occupy different worlds at different points in time. So that F sharp that was once dissonant, it now becomes a root note. F natural, the 4 becomes the 6. The G natural, which is the 5th, very stable note of a C minor in one measure, then becomes the 9th in the next measure. So the ground is constantly shifting. That constant, gentle destabilization of where you think you are harmonically, that's not just the title of this piece, it is the piece. And for me, it's a big part of what makes Bill's music so special. And so all of these elements combine, in my opinion, to make Bill Frisell sound like Bill Frisell. So I'd like to finish with a story. Last October, Bill Frisell with Thomas Morgan on bass and Rudy Royston on drums played a 3-night residency at a place just around the corner from me, the Jazz Lab in Brunswick. I was front row every night for both sets that whole weekend. One of the things that really stood out to me was that every time he played Strange Meeting, and from memory, I think he played it almost every set, is that every different version that he played was different and unique and special and was adapted to fit the context that it was taking place in. So one of the versions was much more confrontational and electric and did some really like crazy fuzz shredding that anyone that's seen him play live will know what I'm talking about. Others were more gentle, more intimate. Others were more swinging. The same piece, the same, melody, the same changes, but each time the ground shifted underneath and it became something else. Something that suited exactly where that set needed to be and take it in the direction that it needed to go. And sitting there front row, I had this realization one of the nights that this is actually what Strange Meeting is about, the meaning of the tune. It's not this fixed object, it's a living, breathing thing. A melody so deep and so open that it can hold all of those different works simultaneously. The confrontational and the tender, the swinging and the more straight. That's not just a great composition, it's a very, very rare one. And that to me is what great music does. It doesn't just give you something beautiful to listen to, it keeps revealing itself and it stays alive. So happy 75th birthday, Bill. You're truly one of a kind. So I'd love to know what's your favorite recording of this tune or what you think defines his sound. Pop a comment below, I'd love to hear from you. If you found this useful, please like, subscribe, and hit the little bell button. I make new videos every week on topics such as triads, shell voicings, and how to get harmonic freedom out of these simple elements. The PDF transcription of this is in the description as well. If you want to work with me one-on-one, I'd love to work with you. I've got lessons available. There's also a Patreon tier that bundles lessons with a monthly discounted rate for all the PDFs and other stuff that I've got available up there on Patreon. So if you're thinking about lessons anyway, I'd hardly consider checking out that option. You get a bit of a discount. The details of that are in the description as well. And as for the Patreon itself, I want to come back to this because making videos like this take a lot of time. I want to keep making content like this readily available for people, and supporting me on Patreon is what can make that a reality. So there are 2 tiers, one that gives you access to all the PDFs of my lessons and bonus content, all for the price of less than a coffee per month, and another tier that includes a monthly lesson each month at a discounted rate. Both tiers have a yearly option which you can save money on as well, and if you join as one of the first 50 founding members, you'll be locked in to that rate for the rest of time. All the details of that are in the description below. And finally, there's one big project that I would really like to undertake, which is a transcription of that entire duo performance of Bill Frisell and Julian Lage, what I like to call the Phantom Telecaster, all 4 arms, properly transcribed. That takes serious time and commitment. If you want to see that transcription happen and some lessons on that, Patreon support is what can make it a reality. Thanks so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed this and found it useful, and I'll see you all next week.